That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. Thank you for having me here today. My title today of this speech is Compassion for Animals and the Self, and I just wrote it yesterday, and I'm actually writing it as I'm talking. Everything that everybody said today relates to what I'm going to speak on, which is love and compassion, and that it doesn't have any boundaries, that it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter how you live, that we are all one and the same, created by a spiritual being, that we are spiritual beings having a human existence. I've always loved animals. How many of you can relate to that? We all love animals because there's no difference between us and them, really. They might have feathers or fur or scales. They might be good looking in, our eyes. They think they're probably, have their own opinion of who looks good and who doesn't. But there's no true difference in their ability to feel. And that's what we are, right? We're just out here feeling. So I grew up on a dairy farm in mid-Michigan. And since I'm from Michigan, I can do this. Right around here, okay? And I had the richest of childhoods. I really did. I was always surrounded by animals. Whether it was in the house with my 14 hamsters, or birds that ended up flying into the house out of their cage, or chickens that made it way into their house at one point or another. My grandparents had chickens. And outside were cows, and horses, and mules, and donkeys. And we had a road that 3 people of the same family lived on, so grandparents, aunt, uncle, and our house. So it was really, it was all our land. It was hundreds of miles for me to explore. So I was also surrounded by the deer and the other wildlife, the woodchucks and the hawks, and it was immaculate. And what I would do with my horses is I would just sit in the pasture, barefoot, cross-legged, and let them come to me. And it was the most spiritual experience I ever had as a kid. I would do the same thing in the woods as well. I learned that they had a language, that they had friends, there's enemies. Some had a little click and some had this click. A flicker of an ear could send a message, 6 horses down. They spoke to each other. What I think when we're kids, we connect to animals so much, and even now, is that there's so many parallels between us and them. You don't have to go searching very long for it. Even though we were dairy farmers, I had no idea what dairy farming was. It's just what we did. I never had a conceptualized idea of what this industry or what we were a part of entailed. I knew that the big cows were across the road, and the younger cows were down at my grandparents'. I knew there were old ones, there were young ones. They never had names, though. They only had numbers. 452 or 305. I never questioned why the babies were taken away. I actually never saw the mourning of the mothers, but now I know that they do. And I never questioned where they went when they grew up, if they were a boy or if they were a girl. They just left. And that's part of the problem, is that we get disconnected. I don't know. You might say, well, where did that cheese come from? I don't know, a farm in Wisconsin. But we don't know the process, whether that's just what's happened from growing and more people living in the city and less people living in rural areas, or if it's intentional. Imagine a kid eating a chicken nugget. Dips it in some hot sauce, whatever his sauce of choice is. Would he still eat the chicken nugget had someone just killed the chicken in front of him? I don't know. At least they should know. At least they should make that decision for themselves. What if they had petted that chicken, bonded with them? Would they have made a different choice then? When I was a kid, I was really influenced by some movies. Anyone see the movie Babe? Loved that movie. But there were some scenes that were tough, right? There was the scene where this cat, as a Siamese grumpy cat, shed light on the story of Babe's family to Babe. You know, what your mother is, what you would be had this farmer not taken pity on you. Another movie was Black Beauty. Oh my gosh, I can't hardly even talk. I was writing this and I was like tearing up, remembering this story that I had like repressed when the live action Disney film, the Black Beauty version. And Ginger is carted away from a life of hard forced labor, always being treated cruelly. And Black Beauty sees her, and then the fate nearly happens to him too. He's in an auction house, and he's withered away, years of service and labor, and he sees a former owner, Joe, and Joe was the only one that ever shown him kindness, and he just barely has enough strength to nicker to Joe, and he hears the recognition of Black Beauty, and he lives happily ever after. We've known for centuries that animals feel pain, and our moral consciousness has questioned it for just as long. This is not a new idea. My job, I think, is to give words to something that we already feel. We all feel it. It's a universal truth. Universal truth is love. That's why we're here today, because we believe in universal love. Back in the early 19th century, Reverend Thomas Chalmers, he was a Scottish Presbyterian, he said, "Animals have all the same sensations of pain as human beings and consequently endure as much pain when their body is hurt. But in their case, the cruelty of torment is greater because they have no hope to look forward to when enduring the last extreme pain." So to me, that means we have even a higher responsibility to take care of our fellow animals. What I think is important with this is that we don't get bogged down with the sadness. It's really sad. If you expose yourself to how awful the current industry is, it can be very challenging, and especially with social media, like you mentioned. It seems like it's all there at once, and it's a lot to bear. We can go back in time and we can make parallels to how animals are being treated today with issues of slavery and Holocaust victims. They may not be the same, but the system of violence is. In fact, Adolf Hitler took ideas for the camps from our meat industry in the US. He read, according to, legend, he read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. And that's where he gained all of his tattoo ideas, where he created infernos, because we do the same thing to animals. We mass slaughter them. Pythagoras in 530 BC said, "As long as man continues the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace, for as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, he who sows the seed of murder and pain cannot reap joy and love." We're all too familiar with the ego and the inner self. And the ego wants more and more and is never happy. Is at the forefront of our actions. We have to sit back and meditate to get rid of it. It's always there. The first time I ever learned that was a book I was reading in Barnes & Noble, and it was like, I'm watching someone else talk? Shut them up. But you can't, right? Unless you're really practicing it every day. It's a ritual. Are we practicing the inner self, the true self, just because we put a coexist bumper sticker on our car, or we wear a peace sign? Or do we have to put it into action? Do we have to align our beliefs with our actions every day? One of my favorite authors is Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "You have just dined, and however scrupulously the slaughterhouse is concealed, in the great graceful distance of miles, there is complicity." I don't want to spend too much time worrying about whether or not historically we had to eat animals for survival. In true situations of survival, I think we might behave a little differently. There's a book, if you're interested, it's Introduction to Animal Rights. I can't think of the author. Gary Francione. And he presents this idea to kind of guide us in where our moral consciousness should go is, in a burning house, who do you save first? Who do you reach first? Is it a dog or is it a human? And if you choose the dog, are you placing more priority on them or vice versa? I don't know what I would do. Is it my dog? Is it your dog? Is it my mother? Is it my friend? Is it my fiance? Is it Hitler? Is it a bad guy? I don't know. I'd like to think that I would place equal value on everyone. I'd like to think that I would rescue whoever was nearest to me. Today, 8 million land animals are killed for food anyone want to take a guess? 8 million every hour. 8 million per hour. That's 192 million every day, 1.3 billion per week, 70 billion a year, 10 billion of that being the US alone each year. By the time it takes me to finish this sentence, 900 animals will have been killed. In a single hour, more deaths to sentient life are caused by our current demand for animals and animal products than the entire Jewish Holocaust from 1941 to 1945. It's killing our rivers and streams. It's not love, therefore it will only destroy when we don't respect our fellow brethren. Pollution from fertilizers, overflowing of lagoons. 1 acre of rainforest is cut down a second. Did you know that? An acre per second. An acre is the size of a football field. And much of that is from our demand for beef. Brazil is one of the largest exporters of beef. So they cut down the rainforest, they'll plant soy plants there or use the land to graze cattle and ship it out to the West. In the US, according to National Geographic, 41% of our land is devoted to raising livestock. Wild mustangs are round off the plains and sent to Canada or Mexico for slaughter since it was banned in the US in 2008. Wolves are legally shot on sight. Ultimately, 80,000 wild animals are killed per year just to protect livestock. We then fatten ourselves on cheeseburgers and milkshakes while 1 in 3 people will die from heart disease. Completely preventable. We know that it's saturated fat and cholesterol, 2 things only found by our consumption of animals. We subsidize the meat, eggs, and dairy industry so people can have that taste, forgetting about the animals that they were once friends with, just so the pharmaceutical industry and the medical professions can thrive off people being sick. Let food be thy medicine. Even Albert Einstein himself said, nothing will benefit human health more or increase chances for survival of life on Earth than the evolution to a vegetarian diet. Let's do an exercise. Imagine those doors open up, and out comes the cutest dog you've ever seen. He's got floppy ears, he's got shaggy hair. How many of you would smile at first sight of that dog? How many of you would feel love when that dog entered the room? How many of you would want to give love to that dog? Right? Now, imagine instead those doors open up and in walks a curly-cued pig. How many of you would smile? Right? You would give love, you would feel love with the pig and the dog. You might say, well, they're different. We've always eaten pigs. We don't eat dogs here. Fair. Do we then protest the You and the Dog Festival in China and other countries? Why? So there's not much difference there, and I think we all can recognize that animals all feel pain. And pigs, by the way, have a higher intelligence than dogs. Harvard University IQ'd them right about a 3-year-old child. No religion mandates eating animals. None, not one, says you have to eat animals or you can't be a part of this religion. What do they all share in universal nature? Compassion, kindness, love, justice. From Hinduism to Buddhism to Christianity and Catholicism, compassion for animals is fundamental. Just recently, Pope John II recognized animals as having a soul. They also share the golden rule. Right? We all know the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. But let me add a little twist to this. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, as if there were another species in our dominant position. Indian philosopher and Hindu guru Sri Aurobindo, hope I'm saying that right, said life is life, whether in a cat, dog, or man. There's no difference there between cat or man. The idea of difference is a human conception for man's own advantage. So I just want to wrap things up with 4 justifications for why we eat animals in 2019. Why do we continue going against our beliefs? Unconsciously, oftentimes. And it falls into taste, convenience, tradition, and habit. Tolstoy and many others have known for hundreds of years that we can be healthy without eating animals. In 1902, he wrote, "A man can live and be healthy without killing animals for food. Therefore, if he eats meat, he participates in taking animal life merely for the sake of his appetite." Taste is just fat, salt, and sugar. We know that. Science has broken it down into those simple components. That's why we crave, salted rice over unsalted, or salted popcorn over unsalted, or cheeseburgers over kale. It's just something that exists inside here that can be replicated other ways. And also, in recent learning in the educational fields, we've learned that we can reverse many of the diseases that are killing so many people today. Heart disease, type 2 diabetes, even certain cancers can all be reversed by diet. Convenience was the second one. Now that's pretty much been eliminated by every Target, Walmart, and Meijer in the United States. We're not talking about a third world country, we're talking about right here, what we all have access to. And if you aren't interested in being super healthy and only buying produce, Taco Bell, Burger King, White Castle, Panera, they all have plant-based options. Third one was habit. Habits are meant to be broken if they're not good for our bodies, our mind, spirit, or the collective. Just like we want meditation to become almost a habit on a daily basis, we too can practice being compassionate to animals 3 meals a day. And lastly, tradition, which can be summed up by the great Polish-American writer Isaac Bashevis Singer. People often say that humans have always eaten animals, as if this is a justification for continuing the practice. According to this logic, we should not try to prevent people from murdering other people, since this has also been done since the earliest of times. I'd like to end with a little guided meditation. I know we had a couple meditations today, but what's one more? So get comfortable. Take a moment to find your center. Imagine you're in a forest. Listen to the busy sounds of bird calls. Find the humming of a hummingbird, his wings flapping so quickly in midair. Listen to the buzz of a bee as he lands on a flower, spreading the pollen and sucking in the nectar. Breathe in deep the smell of pine needles. When you're ready, walk barefoot to a meadow where a herd of horses graze on the clover and bluegrass. Sit down. Send them the intention you bring them no harm. Observe their existence. Know that it all works in harmony. You are a part of that harmony. It works with you in it, and it also works without us in it. It's a gift for us to enjoy. Now take your hand and place it on your heart. Feel the beat. Hear the heartbeat of the horses in your own. Hear your heartbeat in the rabbits, deer, and woodchucks nearby. Hear your voice in the crow of a chicken. Hear your breath in the sigh of a pig as she lays down for a nap. See your eyelashes in the long eyelashes of a cow and notice how they blink just like yours. See yourself in the eyes of another, and what harm can you do? Namaste.